Listeners be advised. The Soliloquy podcast discuss matters related to the human experience and many that are sexual in nature. Due to this, some conversations may surround triggering topics such as sexual violence, self-harm, abuse, and much more. Please be advised, a list of crisis and psychological resources will be available in the show notes of this episode. With that said, let's get started with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions.
In the event that there is a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop from the overhead. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Breathe normally as oxygen is flowing even if the mask is not in. Be sure to adjust your own mask before helping others.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. This is your favorite host, Vernon T. Scott, also known as Slaytor Jackson, and for you freaky motherfuckers out there, Sebastian Adams. On today's episode, we are discussing sex work, and who do I have the pleasure of speaking with today? It's a fabulous and beautiful motherfucker by the name of Dimitri Wiles. Demi for short.
Hi.
How art thou?
I'm great. And for all you freaky motherfuckers out there, you can call me Helen's ass.
Ooh, yes. I fuss with it. Yes. So look, we got two freaky people on.
Yes.
Don't you love it? Artists, I know you all love it. Yes. Be freaky. Join OnlyFans. Anyways.
Once upon a time, I was considering that. Sorry. I'm not gonna do that anymore. Whoops.
With the vape attacks.
Whoa. Don't vape when you're doing a podcast, kids. Oops.
I should not be laughing. I should be asking, are you okay? I'm a horrible
I'm
person
fine.
Oh God, it's just like
Don't vape when you're doing podcast, kids. Bad idea.
It's not your friend.
Mm-mm.
So, Demi, who the fuck are you? So the audience know exactly what you do, all the things, hookup horror stories, all that,
Right. So I'm a sex writer and educator. I basically have turned my entire life into the thing that scares me the most, which is sex and dating and the tumultuous lives that happen in between. I have two blogs. One is the Deviant Diaries. That's my own personal memoirs. And then I have a Deviant's Guide to Sex, which is kind of like a how-to guide for the modern age of how sex and dating works. And I have a podcast called Hookup Horror Stories, and we all have a few of those, I think, in our backlog.
Chile, oh my God. Yeah. I think with this day and age, with these apps and with these people that's in society, yeah, we have way too many.
Got way too many.
Way too many. It's just like, why? Can we just not have safe sex? Just be like, I trust you, you trust me, and we just hook up. We have these conversations. I don't have to worry about my life being in danger. Like, can we just no too much?
Can I? You said safe sex. Can I question you on something? Is there safe sex? Is there such a thing as safe sex?
I will say for safe sex, it depends on the person, what they define as safe. So safe can be security, meaning that the location that you're going to is predominantly a safe place and secure and homey feel. It can be using protection. It can be anything in between that, letting your friend know exactly where you're going, sharing your location, all those other things.
That's all smart safety tips, yes. But I challenge you this. I don't think there is such a thing as safe sex because of the emotional risk that it takes as well. I think in every encounter, you have an emotional risk of getting attached to that person, whether you intend to or not. And I don't think no matter whatever safety measures you take nothing can prepare you for that.
Yeah, I will say that's a very fair statement there. I definitely agree with that. Because most definitely if it's one of those sexual experiences that was just too good and you accidentally get hooked on just that feeling,
Stigmatized. Yep.
uh, it
Yep.
happens. It happens. I think I have a hookup horror story related to that one, but that's completely different.
We
That's
all
not what
do. We've all been stigmatized at some point or another. And that's the thing. It's like, oh my God, like I think I really like this person. No, no, no. You just really like the sex.
exactly, exactly. That's why I'm here. That let's learn to control your emotions. Like, do you need to talk to your therapist about this? Like, so that they
Yeah.
can let you know you're not in
Probably.
love with that person. You're just strongly infatuated because you had great sex. And you're
Yep.
so like you frequently have mediocre sex, and that one wow factor just changed your life a little bit.
Just
It's not what it
changed your life.
was.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where my problems usually kick in is where I get a little too attached to whatever's happening.
Right, right. It's like the that honeymoon phase. I love it though. I do love a good honeymoon phase, but when you have to have that self-talk of, this is too early for you to be this deep, bring
Right.
that back. What are you
Right.
doing?
Right.
Understand where you are. And this is
Reel
why
it
therapy
in.
is important, people. Go to therapy. Okay.
Why? Well, I don't go to therapy, but I mean, I have a podcast. So, I mean, that's basically therapy, right?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. That's how most comedians like have their therapy sessions. So I'm
Mhm.
like, it works.
Yeah.
So let's get started with the topic of sex work. The first thing
But,
that we were going to talk about is what is human trafficking?
right. So I am a human trafficking advocate. I have a certificate in this from Polaris Project. So basically what human trafficking is it's forced labor or sexual slavery. So there's basically two kinds of human trafficking, which is labor or sex trafficking. And it's all over the place. It could be anywhere in the world, and there is some form of human trafficking that's happening there. You could probably think of something that happened like really recently at a Mavericks game in Texas. There was a story of a girl who was literally taken from the game and sold off into slavery for like days where she was repeatedly drugged. She had no idea what was going on to her. And she was just there for like I forget the time frame, but like 10 days, I think is how long she was gone. And they couldn't even find her. Like the police actually didn't even get involved. But basically, yeah, it's it's a whole nother story, sorry. But yeah, like basically the police didn't even get involved. And that's just one form of sexual of sex trafficking, which is basically kind of like a kidnapping, which is actually quite rare in my it does tend to happen, but it's really something that happens a little bit closer to home. So basically there's two kinds: labor trafficking, sex trafficking. The labor trafficking is usually from people who need a job, or they're kind of sold off into these places where they're not really sure what to do, but they're kind of like trapped in a way. A lot
Mhm.
of immigrants happens, like a lot of like labor workers, migrant workers are victims of this. So yeah, it's a very complex topic. It's a very complex system that's in place.
See, the question that's sitting on me right now is like, where does a person start to help in the prevention process?
Well, that's kind of where it gets a little bit tricky, because like how do you identify who is being sex trafficked? So anyone can be trafficked. Anybody, any single person. It could be black person, white person, male, female, anything in between. But women of color, immigrants, and the LGBT community are the most vulnerable.
Mm,
So you kind of start there. And the kind of signs of being a victim are maybe a little bit more subtle at times. Like you're not gonna really gonna see a whole lot of like violence unless that is part of the situation. And a lot of the times people don't even know they're being trafficked, because they are kind of, there's a grooming or a manipulation that comes in place with this, because it comes from kind of people that are close to the victim. It could be a lot of family members. It could be a lot of spouses, even people close to them. The case with the Mavericks game was very interesting, because she met the people on the internet. She met the people on Instagram, and then they kind of like sideswiped her. So that kind of thing does happen too, but again, it's quite rare. So when you actually, basically, the victims are people who have a need that the traffickers can fill. And so basically that could be food, money, housing, things like that, So that's the kind of where you can kind of start identifying where people are being a victim of this. And usually people are being watched very closely by other people. They're a little bit afraid to like they can't go out, they can't like, you know, meet outside of a certain time.
Mhm.
They have a person who's kind of like watching them all the time. That's another thing to kind of watch out for. But yeah, like there's definitely some abuse, some neglect, some level of control that's being inflicted on the victim.
Mm. Some days I do wish that we had more PSAs surrounding like issues related to like human trafficking and whatnot. I know like here
Mhm.
in Georgia, we have a training that most employees, state employees take, but at the same time, it should not stop at state employees. And I think the reason why
Right.
I see this is because I work in the education system, and it is good for us to recognize if a student that that's within our care is possibly being trafficked. But at the same time, these same students aren't getting the same information that we're getting. They're
Right.
not exposed to how they can recognize human trafficking within their peer groups, or if a friend were to tell them certain things that's going on with them. Like I remember something happened to a cousin of mine. Not too long ago, where she just ran away, and I learned that I don't think this happened during the time she ran away, but she was sexually abused at one time in her life.
Mhm.
And while she was like away from her family, all the thoughts in my head were going around like, okay, what if somebody finds her on the streets? What if someone were to like kidnap her, exploit her? What if
Right.
someone were to like traffic her? Like we most of the family does not know what to look for. No one really knows how to help her out of the situation if she were to fall into that. And even with her peers, some of them may have met someone who's older, who's grooming them into becoming a sex trafficked person,
Mhm.
and they don't recognize that they're recruiting someone else just to be a victim of the same thing that they're being victimized for, and they
Right.
just don't understand everything that's going on. And having that like PSA to educate people on an ongoing basis, I see that as being a lot more helpful, most definitely to our most vulnerable populations, our children, our college students, staff workers, people who are in abusive relationships outside of these relationships. It just helps everybody as a whole if we do have these conversations a lot more.
Completely. Yeah. I like to use a lot of like my content. Like I studied journalism in college, so that's kind of like my backup degree, I guess, which I didn't even get a degree, but you know, that's what I studied. And I love the news. I love the news, number one, as information, but also as a teaching method. So like I do a lot of like news segments on my podcast. I do news segments in my content I create. And the way people can really learn about this is kind of like set up a Google alert for human trafficking or like sex trafficking
Mm,
alerts. That way you can kind of see the things that are being documented in real time and what to look out for. You know, just be a little bit aware because I feel like sometimes these signs might lead you down a place that like maybe they're not being trafficked. You just might think they're being trafficked, and that could be a little uncomfortable to like navigate.
mhm,
But at least you are kind of prepared for that moment that if it does happen to someone you know, that you're a little bit more prepared to like how to handle it.
mm.
So yeah, just like go to the people that like understand this. Go to the people, go to the what's the saying? Find the find the beacons, find the people who know about it, essentially.
Mhm.
I feel like RuPaul says that. Find the light. I don't know. I forget the saying.
Essentially, make sure you find somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the moral of the story, but I definitely get it. And I think that's an important message, because even when I don't know how we're at this point in our society that we no longer trust the people who are the experts. Um,
Right.
it's so
There's a
weird.
whole lot of misinformation in the world in general, and especially about human trafficking. Like we can talk about Pizzagate for like days.
The Holiloquy podcast focuses on the variability of sexual expression. When it comes to sexual expression, we often depend on pornography to illustrate how one must perform sexually. For those who have not learned this by now, The stuff you see in porn is not real. Pornography provides a singular perspective of sexual expression that is not often the reality we see during our own sexual encounters. The Holiloquy podcast is a conversation that takes you outside of the compressed box of what many know about sex. Some of the topics we discuss includes kinks, condom usage, status disclosure, and past sexual experiences. The Holiloquy podcast steps out on sexual norms and recognizes that the norm is not the only normal. Subscribe today and join the conversation.
In the world in general, and especially about human trafficking, like we can talk about Pizzagate for like days, because like that was a whole thing. Everyone's heard about this. Obviously it was a conspiracy theory. It wasn't a real thing, but that's kind of like everyone's first impression of what human trafficking was. It was like, there is Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are selling children out of a pizza shop in DC. Like, what? That's not a thing. Meanwhile, you have people like Jeffrey Epstein who are completely getting away with it because of their privilege, you know? So
And
there's a
for the
whole lot
most,
of like, there's a whole lot of misinformation about it. I think with that misinformation comes with the doubt of the people who actually know what they're talking about.
mm, like, honestly, for the most part, Jeffrey Epstein did get away with it. Like,
No, he didn't. No, he finally got caught, but he had been caught before. He had been caught several times. They had been
yeah,
tracking him for like years. And then yeah, he still kind of escaped getting any sort of repercussions for it because he killed himself.
exactly.
So, but Ghislaine Maxwell was the one who procured the victims for him. Like she was
Mhm.
the one that actually, because they had a thing, but he wasn't reciprocating for her anymore. So their kind of relationship was based on the fact that she could procure girls for him,
Mhm.
and that was their extent of their relationship. And she's in prison now,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things where it's like, you know, the people, the real victims, yeah, like this, we really we we blow out of proportion the things um that are more rare, you know, because they're so crazy, you know, the things that
Mhm.
remember us most. But the real victims are the ones that are the everyday people that are being trafficked.
Mm, exactly. And which brings me to the next topic, which is the evils of exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we were talking about how in the system that we live in, it is like the lack of protection for so many people just makes it so
Mm-hmm.
much easier for them to be exploited. Most
Yeah.
definitely, like for people who may be trans or within the LGBTQ community. And I think about further along in our history where when you just have a whiff that this person may be within the LGBTQ community, they're not getting hired. So because they're not getting a job, what are the options do they have other than to make money through the oldest profession out there, which is sex work? And that cycle continues to this day, where you may have all the qualifications for a specific job and you're not getting hired because we don't like the way that you look. We do not like the way that your hair is. We don't like the fact that you may be trans. We don't like the fact that you're queer.
Right.
So just how exploitation just lead people into vulnerable positions.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is like victims don't really see themselves as victims, as there's a particular kind of grooming that happens, and like a manipulation that even happens that really solidifies the emotional bonds that the victims have with their exploiters. And that's what makes it so nefarious, because like they don't really know what's happening to them, because a lot of them are like, you know, young people, and we don't know these things. We're not taught these things. A lot of them come from different backgrounds, you know, socioeconomic backgrounds. So obviously there's a little bit of like vulnerability there as well, or a lot of vulnerability in a lot of cases. And a lot of the times too, if they even try to leave, that they're even threatened with violence, or that they're just going to be cut off completely. So there's a real sense of fear that goes along with that as well. And that's kind of how evil it is, because it's so nefarious. Like you can't really nail down like a boogeyman, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, I think of this time when I was working in higher ed. Well, I'm kind of still in higher ed, but I was working in housing. And there was this young lady who we learned that summer was being sex trafficked. And of course, my position can only go so far, but just to talk to like the officers, like, hey, this is what's going on, and then it's just well, what can we do?
Mhm.
Kind of mindset. And I'm like, maybe reach out to her and find some type of way to help her out, get her out of this situation might help, do something. Because I'm not the person who has the weapons, because I don't know if this young lady has a pimp or anything, and I don't know what they're packing. And I'm not going to
Right.
pull up and try to fight for the safety of this person, and I don't have the means to protect myself other than my hands. And people don't like to use hands these days. So, what can you do to help this young lady? Became the conversation.
Unfortunately, nothing off the bat. You can't really put yourself at risk for to try to be a savior for someone else. So they kind of have to like save themselves in a way. You can guide them and help them become educated as to what's happening to them. So that's going to be like the best method for it, I think, is just kind of like have a conversation with them, or like have a continuing conversation with them, and really kind of like get to know them, start to build a trust with them, and then kind of like start gathering information as much as you can. And then once you have the information that you need, then go to the authorities.
Hmm, that's good to know. I
Yeah.
appreciate you. So anybody who knows someone that's in that predicament, there you go. That's I would say it's not
There's
the
tons of hotlines around. Actually, when I was in New York just in February, there was stickers on every single door and in the hallway and in the elevator of a human trafficking hotline that's literally on every single like surface there. So there's even in bathrooms at the airport. Airports are a big place for this too, by the way.
mm,
But yeah,
Atlanta.
it's definitely one of those things that's becoming more available, and the information is becoming more available. But yeah, it's definitely tricky. You can't go in there on your white shining horse and try to save the day. You have to kind of like help in a much more softer way.
Similar to like someone who's like a victim of abuse in a
Right.
way.
Right.
Um, so that's good to know. And yeah, when you said airports, my first thought was the Atlanta airport, because it is a major um, contributor to sex trafficking on a global scale. If
Yeah.
anybody did not know that.
How
So,
I got into this was such a weird story too. Like I was on TikTok and
oh, TikTok.
I've I've definitely had like a lot of like interest in this subject, and I've kind of like picked some things up over the years, but there was and that information kind of like guided this kind of new thing, that because I saw this girl who posted this TikTok about her being sex trafficked. And I was like, wait a second, this is like an influencer. She was saying that she was being sex trafficked by like Black China. She's a nut job, you know. So I immediately like smelled the bullshit detector. So I was like, let me research this. And so I researched her first of all, and then I researched like more about human trafficking. What are the signs of it? And the signs that she was dishing out were not the sign. Traffickers don't go for influencers. They don't go for people. Not only that, this girl was actually on the Dr. Phil show back in the day because she's a compulsive liar, you
Mm,
know? So I immediately smelled the bullshit detector, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make a TikTok. I'm gonna explain exactly what this is. I'm gonna explain why it's incorrect, and then I'm gonna make even more videos about what human trafficking is. So that kind of like delved me into like this world a little bit more. It got so it's that was like my first viral video,
mhm.
and the girl actually started commenting on that because people were like, oh my gosh, she's so full of shit. And it's like, well, yeah, duh. And then she was like, no, no, don't listen to him. He's just trying to get views or whatever. I'm like, no, girl, I'm just trying to like call the bullshit. You're a
Right.
bullshitter. So I fell into it on accident, but at the same time, I'm like, this is kind of what I really want to do, is like be a vocal person for people that might be experiencing this, or even just to educate others on the subject.
Mm. And we appreciate your work as needed. And oh, these influencers do bother me. The reason why is because, like my background is in sexual assault and rape culture,
Right.
and my best friend, she was telling me about this one influencer who was talking about how she went out and like talked to this. Well, it was she was in communication with another influencer and they engaged in sex, consensual sex. Like
Mhm.
they've talked about sexual diseases and everything, lack of protection. All these conversations were had. And then there was a moment when she learned that he was engaged with other people, as though he did not already tell her that he's engaged with other people. Now it becomes a health concern. He probably gave me something. I was
Right.
sexually assaulted because he didn't tell me about this other. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like the misinformation that this influencer was able to provide their followers around this
Mhm.
situation, rather than just holding themselves accountable or even just acknowledging their own hurt feelings in a way, like made it possible for one influencer to lose followers, lose whatever finances they were making on their platform, have allegations about them. Glad I don't know if there was any kind of defamation thing that was had as a result of this. It's just I'm so tired of people without any educational background or any type of knowledge about the things that they're saying and just throwing things out there
Did you
and
hear about the
hoping it
story
sticks.
about the Idaho 5 or whatever, about how they were do you know the story about
Oh
the kids that
no.
got murdered in their house in Idaho?
Oh my God.
College kids. Yeah, it's a huge story. It was like all over the place for like all last year. But they finally found the guy. But basically, there was a woman on TikTok who was had a bunch of like, she was a tarot reader and like an astrologer or something. She was a fucking
Mhm.
weirdo. But she was also like one of those couch armchair murderinos who are, you know, fucking Misty from Yellow Jackets.
Oh yes. I
she
love Yellow
so she
Jackets.
said, you know what, it's the professor, that did it, blah blah blah.
Yes, I heard about that.
This girl has zero qualifications whatsoever. She's just, and she said like the spirits told her this and like blah blah blah. And so she kept saying it even after they got, she like the professor issued a cease and desist. She kept doing it. And because of all that, I don't know what happened afterwards, but these people who have like this area of influence in whatever it is that they are doing can easily spread misinformation just
Hmm.
because they're weird, you know?
Yeah, it's like almost definitely when it comes around sexuality and people talking about
Definitely.
relationships and this is how a relationship is supposed to be. My thing is whenever someone is talking about these things, just say for me at the end of that, like
Right.
just so people understand that when you say a woman should be this, a man should be this, and you acknowledge for me, that means that is for you only and whoever you choose to engage with. But when you have this blanket ass statement and say that this is what how your relationship should be, and now these young people who probably have not seen a healthy relationship in their lives is following that same message because it's the loudest one, you're just ruining a lot of people's lives. You're
That's
make
called sexual fascism.
if that is a thing, I like that.
It's not. I just made it up.
So that's going to be the name of the episode. Thank you so much.
Sexual fascism. But no, there is no one size fits all. That's the thing. People try to water down what these complex subjects are into like a blanket statement, and you can't do that. You have to approach things from all angles, especially sex.
Exactly. Like I've had so many people ask me like, "Oh, is this considered rape?" And I'm like, "It depends on the situation. It really does." Like even when it
Mhm.
comes to drunk sex, there are plenty of people who enjoy having drunk sex. Legally, is it rape? Yes. But if did both persons consent to it? It depends on if they really did, if they were cognizant enough to have this conversation with their partner and they had that trust and comfort with their partner and they engaged in that. It's not. And just having that conversation just it's so much.
Consent's
It's
also not just a one-time thing. You can't just ask the first thing. It's a constant. You have to
that
continue
too.
it. You have to continue. It's just simple like, is this okay? Is like all you need.
Exactly.
It doesn't
And
have to be that hard.
it doesn't have to be. And before we jump deep into that conversation, we'll say that for the next episode because it's that
Yeah.
yeah, that's what that one's about. So To come from the tangent back to the actual episode,
Right.
one of the things that I wanted to touch base on is the difference between sex work and sex trafficking. What do you
Mhm.
have for us?
Well, so there's a lot of like conversation that's happening, especially like in the porn world. A lot of like Tumblr, Craigslist, all this stuff is kind of like doing their best to combat sex trafficking because a lot of the people on those have been or are victims of trafficking and they just weren't aware of it. Unfortunately, it's kind of a band-aid situation. There's a lot more nuance to the conversation about that, but the main difference between sex work and sex trafficking is the people who engage in sex work actually enjoy sex work. The people who are engaging in sex trafficking are kind of doing so because they're being forced.
Mm,
um they're not, a lot of them might not think they're being forced into it, but they're kind of being manipulated into it at the very
mm,
least. That's ultimately the biggest difference between the two. I personally think that it is a whole lot, let me rephrase that actually. I think that the band-aid situation of these kind of, Tumblr, Craigslist, all that stuff, that doesn't really address the things. It just makes the websites not liable for the actual
mm,
abuses that are being taken place on their platform. But it's the thing that really helps it is that really assists is addressing the more socioeconomic issues and investing in resources for victims.
mm. I agree. I agree 100%. Like Tumblr porn was amazing. And
And we've all probably seen someone who is being trafficked and we just didn't know it.
that too. And even when it comes to like I saw this documentary and it was about many other young women who go into the porn industry and they either cycle downward or they just have a spiral into I guess addiction or just being
Sure.
unhappiness or being having vaginal tears and whatnot because they're being put in scenes that they're not ready for and all
Right.
of this and just how brutal the porn industry can be for these people
Mhm.
and it hurt me because I'm like why not take this person's their youth in consideration, their experience in consideration, their
Mhm.
comfort level, rather than just putting them in scenes that you know that they're not ready for, or putting them in situations that they may experience some kind of tearing, rather than making everything comfortable. Because when I see porn, granted, I love amateur porn for the most part, but whenever I see something that has quality production, my mindset always goes to the prep within it, the comfortability of these
Mhm.
individuals who are involved, the pleasure that the person is actually receiving, because you can tell those things whenever you've experienced good sex, let's put it that
Yeah.
way. You can tell if the person's really being pleased in the scenes that they're in, and I don't see that in a lot of these videos, and it makes me extremely uncomfortable because of that too.
Yeah. A lot of amateurs, I think, this is, I'm no expert in this, but like a lot of the amateurs that I know of and heard of, they're kind of just dipping into it. They're not really like sure what they're doing with it just yet. And it's just kind of like a step in the door. Whereas the people who work in like the studios are very professional. They know exactly what they're doing. They know like there's usually a set around them. There's usually like one or two camera guys. There's usually like people that are there kind of like making things comfortable for them. And
Mm,
so that's kind of leads into our next topic, which is like legalizing sex work, is the
mhm,
people that actually do engage in it have the same kind of legal protections that anyone else who has a job would do.
mm,
There's a paper trail, there's like legal protections. So like you can say my boss was like abusing me or whatever. And like you work at a grocery store, you can say my boss was abusing me.
mm,
Fine. They're going to go to HR, they're going to do all this stuff. That doesn't happen for people who are engaging in sex work. And there's also a stigma around that as well, because they think like, well, if you're in this work, then you're inviting it. No, that's
right.
not the case. So it's because of, if you add the legal protections with this, it kind of weeds out the nefarious agents of, the trafficking itself and the people who are in it just to kind of like abuse others.
Mhm. That goes back to the exploitation thing.
Yep.
Like, if you cannot exploit people, their lives get so much easier. As long
And a
as
lot of the
people,
times too, like
mhm,
when they actually go through the legal progressions for, or the legal processes for this, they the victims themselves are often put in jail too because they are the ones that are engaging in something like sex work, which is
mhm,
illegal under US law. So they're oftentimes afraid to even say anything because of that, because they might go to jail themselves. So it's a very complex. There is like a no-win kind of thing with it,
mhm.
you know.
Oh, I think that's another conversation to just figure out where can you start, where to start with legalization. But I know there's plenty of sex workers who are also advocates who are doing their best
Yeah.
to um, make things better to legalize sex work as well as get rid of Sesta Foster because I read over it and
Sesta Fosta, what's that?
so that is the what's the acronym again? It's essentially a legal act that was passed in order for publishers like Facebook and other social media platforms to not be liable for what other people post on their platforms that may be like
Oh, this is recent, huh?
yeah, like I think within the last, it was
Couple
around
years.
2020-ish,
Yeah, yeah,
probably the year before that. It is the reason why if you post anything that has the word orgasm or mention pleasure on Instagram, you're not able to post it, or the algorithm puts you a lot further down because of
yeah.
what you're talking about. However, you can speak about like condom usage and anything that's abstinence-based education. You can freely say those kind of things and there's no punishments related to it.
Yeah.
It's also the reason why you cannot show nipples online, except for if it's a male chest because we love men
Actually, I think
chests.
that was repealed. I think you can show nipples on Instagram now.
You can show nipples? Oh my God.
I think so because Chelsea Handler was like, "Yeah, I could show nipples." I think, if I'm
Oh,
not mistaken, did I make this up? I'm not. I don't remember. I feel like
look.
this is pretty recent though.
Oh my gosh. Look, I might need to like drop some extra photos. Let the titties, it's free titty
Let the titties out.
Fridays. Let the
Free the
titties
titties.
out. Free all the titties. Oh my God. Let me find out Instagram. Like, I just need someone because I don't have the technical experience to do this, and I just don't have the time of the day to just make an app where you can just be sexual and be free, and also within this app protect vulnerable populations.
Right.
Like just a holistic approach to app creation. I know it's probably not going to be able to make it on iPhones. I'm sorry, I have my iPhone, but I would definitely get an Android to take part in that social media platform.
Yeah.
Love you, Apple, but goodbye, bitch.
I'll be your first investor. I'll be your first investor.
Right? It'd be so much fun. Like that's all I use Twitter for, anyways. It's for my Twitter porn, and if I, whenever Twitter does go down, I just need to know what's going to be the next platform where I can get the same stuff. Okay.
Well, it's sure not going to be Mastodon because Mastodon sucks. I tried it. It
Well,
sucked. I'm like, what the fuck? Server? What? No, thank you.
no, thank you. We're good on that. Unless they hire the old people from Twitter. But again, I don't want a repeat Twitter. I really don't. I just want something completely new.
Yeah.
But with that being said, are you ready to transition into a little bit of Never Have I Ever?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All righty. So,
I
uh,
always lose this game. I was telling you earlier.
so let's see. Never have I ever worn a chastity device.
Oh, I've never worn that actually.
See,
Haha.
look at that. Me neither. Would you though?
Probably. Try it out.
Like
Never say no.
I've been thinking about it. It's
I
not
mean, I've worn cock rings for like days. Like,
really. How
which
was that experience?
don't do that because um when I finally took it off, I took it off as maybe like 48 hours. But I started getting an infection in my left testicle
Oh my
that
God.
like it was so painful. It swelled to the size of like a tennis ball.
Oh my God.
And I had to go to the doctor and be like, what the fuck is going on with my ball? Well, it's because like I had worn that thing for so long that like the actual like membranes inside were kind of like getting rubbed the wrong way, and
Mhm.
it got irritated, and then the bacteria got into it from the urinary tract, and it was basically a UTI in my ball sack. It was fucking
Oh my
gross.
God. Okay, so did you only have to do antibiotics or did it require more like
Just
surgery?
antibiotics, yeah.
Oh, thank God. Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
But it was so painful.
it sounds painful. Like whenever I so if you whoever feels like judging me, I accept the judgment. I don't give a damn. So one of the reasons why I kind of want to try the chastity device is because I kind of want to pee while wearing one. I don't know why. And
How does
I
that
don't,
work?
right? That's the reason why I just want to figure that out. And I also feel like I might end up peeing on myself too. So I feel like I might just have to sit on the toilet when I do like try to piss
Why
while
not do it
wearing
in the
one.
shower? Yeah.
Or yeah, or the shower. Oh, that's a good conversation. So piss in the shower, yes or no?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Same. And I try to aim
Goes down the
towards the
drain. What the
drain.
hell? Why do
Right.
people have a hard
Like
time thinking about this?
I still clean my shower. Like every time people have that argument and they are like so disgusted by it, I'm like, do you not clean your shower? Like,
No, they don't.
like,
But
like
even still, it's liquid. It goes right down the drain.
exactly. Like I just will never understand why people are so disgusted by that thought. And I'm like, okay, are you the only person in your household? If so, do whatever the fuck you want to do. No one's judging you. If it's someone else in your household, okay, do whatever the fuck you want to do. Like you can step out of the shower, piss, and then step right back in. But I'm wasting water at this point, so I'm just gonna go ahead and go
Yeah.
and keep my life great. So you ready for another one?
Yeah. I was gonna
Never.
say, what kind of chastity belt though would you try? I would like maybe try a metal one.
Oh, definitely metal for me.
There's something kind of like medieval and like interesting about that, I
Like I
think.
have a thing for metal, so I just have to. I just have to. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, just I think I will put it in the freezer before actually putting it on, just to have that cold feeling to it. Okay, I need to give me a chastity device. There we go. That might be
That's
my
on the
next
list.
purchase.
Amazon.
What do you got for me today? So I might need to, yeah, I might, I don't consider, what I will make the argument that that's a sex toy. So I'm going to get one and then review it for the vibrator in my pod.
There you
I'm
go.
going to do that. Yes. So never have I ever participated in an orgy.
I have. I
I have
have.
not yet. I want to.
What's an orgy? Like define an orgy. Like just three or more people?
If it's so for me, I will say an orgy is probably four more.
Four or
The
more.
reason why is because like a threesome, it just doesn't seem right because there's a
Yeah.
word for it.
True.
And then any more than that, it's just okay. And as so long as everybody involved are engaging with each other, be it like flip-flopping or swapping out partners and stuff like
Mhm.
that. If it's just two separate people having sex in the same room, I don't count. That's just a one-on-one session. It's just convenient. Like
Right.
you're at the hotel room, you got
Right.
couples. That's what
Not
that
just
is to me.
sharing a space.
That is not an orgy to me. But
Well,
like,
then yeah, I have had an orgy then. I've been an orgy.
how was that experience for you?
It was fine. I mean, I wasn't super into like everyone that was there, but like
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, it was fine. It was cool. I let loose a little bit. I was like, sure, let's go.
Let's live tonight.
I was
I
not sober at the time. I probably helped.
I need to plan one. And I think that's going to be my next mission to plan an orgy and set that up and just attend and enjoy it. Enjoy it. I don't think I will be able to do it here in Augusta. But I might be able to in Atlanta because there's a lot more open-minded people there. But at the same time,
I am sure you can find an orgy in Atlanta.
right.
Atlanta's a freaky place.
It really is. Oh my gosh. Like, oh my God. It's the only thing is that Atlanta energy always bothers me. So I'm just like, I'm good on that.
Yeah.
But I might do that. I'm going to do that. Would you like a would you rather?
Yeah.
Would you rather? Oh, this actually fits the episode. That's great. Would you rather pay for sex or get paid for it?
Well, I've never gotten paid for it, so I'd like to prefer that.
For me, this is one of those questions I have to just say both of them because like both of them just works for me. Like I have I been paid for sex? Actually, someone gave me gas money and they did it in a very weird way. They put it in my glove compartment. I was like, did I just
That's
what?
the vehicular equivalent of like putting them on the side
Exactly.
table.
I was like, what just happened? Like, I'm like right here. Like, you could just hand that to me. Like, there's no laws that was broken here. But okay. Like, what are we doing here? So that happened.
I
Um,
will say that times I've paid for sex, no, it wasn't good. And one time I got ripped off. So I was like, oh, fuck this shit ever again. Yeah.
and that's my issue. That is my issue. It's like I don't want to pay for something and I don't enjoy it. And
Mhm.
for me, I need a professional. Like if I've been watching
Yeah.
a certain person's content for such a long time and I'm like, oh, I would love to engage with them and have sex with them. Oh, definitely I will pay for it. If it's not satisfying, okay, it happened, but I paid for their time anyway, so I'm okay with that.
I need a what's the movie called? Good Luck to You, Leo Grand experience. I need that experience.
Mm,
You know this movie?
mm, mm.
Oh, you should watch this on
Watch that.
Hulu.
I
It's
need
on
to watch
Hulu.
that. So what
It's a
happened?
really great movie. It's a really great kind of like illustration of like sex work and like what the benefits can be. There's a whole lot to it. It's really cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
what was the name of that again? You said Good
Good
Luck,
luck to
Leo.
you. Good luck to you, Leo Grand. Like spelled Leogrande, like grande, but like grand.
Hmm. I'm going to add that to my weekend list of things to watch after Digimon.
Digimon.
I
Who's your
have
favorite Digimon?
oh Patamon because
Patamon.
he evolves into fucking Enjamon and then Mega Enjamon and then Seraphimon. I don't know why, but when that happened when I was younger, I was like, oh my fucking goodness, it's an angel. Yes. And it's like I've been sold since.
Mine's Vmon. Vmon's my
Oh,
favorite.
Vemon is so adorable.
I
Irritating,
know.
but adorable as hell.
That's my vibe. It's irritating but adorable. Yep, personality. I liked him. Close second would be Gatomon. Gatomon's cool
Oh
too.
yes, yes. She's my second. She's like my number two. And I love every single one of her evolutions as well. Except for when she was like the cat with the stone tablets. Like I
Oh yeah.
enjoy the concept. I loved like the way she looked, but I also was like, she's pointless. She's just a flying cat that throws stone tablets.
I know. The whole show didn't make
This.
any sense whatsoever.
Like, what are we doing here? Oh God. Alrighty. So, do you have any last words that you would like to share with the audience before I close this out?
Just do it.
Okay, Nike. This
So
episode
there's
is
a
sponsored
story
by
about this.
Nike.
There's
I'm
a
joking.
story about this. There's a
Mhm.
story about this. So did you know that the Nike logo, the Nike slogan, "Just Do It," was actually the last words of a man that was on death row?
Oh,
That's where they got the slogan from. Dark history. The more you
oh.
know.
Does this man have like surviving relatives that are currently alive? Because I feel like Nike owes them some money for that.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. If you watch a recent episode of My Favorite Murder, they tell the whole story. It's pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, look, we got a history fact.
You get a lot with me.
I see. I see. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Denny, for coming on to the podcast. You are greatly appreciated, good sir.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So, to the audience out there, thank you all so much for listening to the Holy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. Just in case no one else told you this today, you are beautiful, you are worthy of happiness and joy, you are enough and then some. You may not live up to the expectation of others, but that is okay. You are only required start to walk in your own shoes. May each day you live lead you towards abundance. With that said, love you all and see you next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Holiloquy Podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. You can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app and find us on the web at www.holiloquy.com. That's www.heauxliloquy.com. Share the podcast with your friends and join the conversation.